I've got our normal setup where we've got program changes written in with hidden text. The difference is this, as it currently stands, has to be on a hidden staff because it's sending to a different IAC bus than the actual notes themselves. The reason for this is that I am triggering the program changes with MIDI notes within Ableton. So the program change sends into Ableton on IAC bus 1. As you can see, actually, it looks like I've got it on IAC bus 3. And then that is sending to IAC bus 1. And IAC bus 1 is triggering scene changes on the master. So this is sending 3 to Ableton. Ableton is receiving and then outputting 1 to the master. And if I hit MIDI assign, you can see that I have assigned each scene to a MIDI note, 1 through 127, one for every single scene. If that seems convoluted, the reason that I had to do that was to prevent the IAC feedback loop inside of Ableton, or inside of Sibelius. And inside of Sibelius, I did have to turn off, which you probably all have that set up this way anyways, but you have to turn your IAC buses off for the use in terms of it receiving information, or you'll get that feedback loop. Ableton works the same way. So what I did inside of Ableton, Ableton, there we go. So inside of Ableton, it's a little bit tricky because you have to make sure that you are sending remote to bus 1 and 2. That allows you to send 1 to the master. You don't have to do 1 and 2. You could just do 1. And then 3 through the rest, you need to be sending or receiving from Ableton. So think of it this way. Bus 1 is sending to itself. Bus 1 here is sending to the master. And it's receiving bus 3 through 11 currently. And I have it set up the opposite direction on the outputs. So it's outputting 1 and 2, and then it's remote controlling Ableton with 3 through 10. So 3 through 10 are what I'm sending from Sibelius to Ableton. And then 1 and 2 I'm using within Ableton to send IAC to itself. This seems confusing at first, but this is actually what everybody's using in churches to send lights and send other playback devices and automating all the playback rigs. Everybody's used to using IAC buses with inside of Ableton. I'm just taking that same concept and sending that IAC information out of Sibelius instead of doing it just all within. So if I go to YouTube and I look up Ableton IAC bus. If you go to this from studios to stage with Will Doggett, he'll explain how to set all of this up, and he's got the best tutorial on YouTube for all that. So what you need to know is that Ableton, this is like a keyboard in main stage. This down here is an instrument rack. This is like your patch changes, and each one of these are like channel strips within each of your patch changes. So if I go in here, here's how Ableton works fundamentally. It works with this thing called a chain selector, where when I change chains, it automatically switches to the next instrument. So if I'm on chain selector 4, now it's running Serum. If I'm on chain selector 5, now it's on Trillium. Don't let that confuse you. If I were to map it like this, top to letter C, and then I were to map it like this, letter C to letter F, that would look a lot more like what you're used to seeing inside of your main stage patches. So the way that this is set up, this scene change triggers this automation clip. And this automation clip has the chain selector mapped to it. So when you trigger the scene, it automatically triggers that chain selector. 3 will then trigger 2. And the reason it's offset by 1, as we know, MIDI starts with 0. It doesn't start with 1, so don't let that confuse you. I typically use 0 as off anyways, just so that it's not confusing. And you'll probably rename these scenes anyways. Top to C. So it becomes less convoluted and less confusing at that point. So as I hit play here, now that you kind of understand how things are running, you're going to hear it trigger Keyscape to start, and then Omnisphere, then Diva, then Serum, then Trillion, then Zebra, and then that's as far as I map, so on and so forth. You can see it'll keep going forever. Now, did this take a long time to set up? Absolutely, but what I can do now is... Oh, I need to talk about this as well. I have my IAC channel strip set up. Here's the thing that makes the entire thing work. It's receiving program changes, and this Max for Live device turns program changes into MIDI notes. And so that's where this comes in so handy, is I'm sending program change 1. It's taking that program change and mapping it to C-2. And if I go to MIDI program, you'll see C-2. And so it's only sending to IAC bus 1 right here. It's receiving from bus 3. And then the notes are coming in on IAC bus 5. So this is sending IAC 3. It's translating that and sending out IAC bus 1. The master is then controlled by that IAC bus 1. And then the notes are coming in on bus 5, and so all this works. I have 4 set up just so that I can set up another synth in a bit, but you don't need that. That's how all of this is working, and I pre-mapped this ahead of time to where you can use as many of these channel strips as you want, and I'm going to set it up all the way to 127. Once you've done all that back-end legwork, what you can do is in your user library, you can save these channel strips by dragging and dropping, and you'll see that I've already done it. I'm not going to overwrite right now. But then you can do the same thing from here for this instrument rack. Once you've built that instrument rack, you can click and drag it into your user, and this is chain selector MIDI strip. You can do this for MIDI strips, you can do this for audio strips, you can do it for everything, and it will pre-map the same exact way. You can also use this to automate effects, so you could throw an effects rack on and map it exactly like this instrument rack, and it will automatically change along with that. There's a lot more that you can do with this. If you don't understand anything that I just said, don't stress. There are a couple resources out there. If you just YouTube chain selectors in Ableton, and look up any of these that have a bunch of views, it'll teach you how to use instrument racks, and then all of this will make sense. If you're trying to do something, I just figured this out today, if you're trying to do something where you have a reverb turning on and off, when you do a patch change in main stage, it doesn't cut the sound off before. In Ableton, it does. And the way that you prevent this is if you go into utilities and you drag a utility on, you can automate the mute button. And when you mute, instead of turning the device off, it lets that reverb or whatever effect that you use keep going on. And so that makes it to where this whole thing works just like Mainstage does, functionality-wise, writing in Sibelius, and then it's sending program changes out. I know that this seems convoluted, but the thing that's nice is once you have it set up, you can save this as a template. File, save live set as a template, and then this is going to be my Sibelius playback template. And now it will work from now on, and I can load this guy up and save it as whatever project file that I'm using in the student. Once I'm done with all my writing, I can delete these 2 channels, and the student will have this. And from there, all I have to do is map my scene changes to whatever keyboard they're using. So currently, my scene changes are mapped with my IAC buses. To change that, if I hit Command-M and I go to this up and down arrow, you can map these up and down arrows to your student's keyboard, whether you want to map it to the top 2 notes or the bottom 2 notes. Another thing that you can do is you can map it to this play button. This play button triggers a scene and then automatically shifts to the next scene, or queues up the next scene for you to hit play and trigger the next one. So that's your seamless back and forth. What I have it set up as on my home computer is / is play, the period is down, and the comma is back. And so if I need to do that, I can do that right now. So I will map this as /. Looks like I've already got it mapped. Oh, I'm stupid. You need to do that under key. That's Command K instead. So Command K, if I hit play with my / and then I hit down with my period, and then I hit up with my comma, and then I hit Command K again to get out of that. Now you'll see if I hit / it's going to trigger and then switch to 2, and you can see that 1 is looping. Inside of my instrument rack, my chain selector, Keyscape, is running right now. So if I then hit / again, it's going to switch to 1, and now I have chain selector 2 on. That's Omnisphere. You can also automate these to turn on and off, which is where Ableton becomes more resource useful than anything else on the market, in my opinion. Like, imagine if MainStage automatically turned everything off when you switched from patch to patch and turned it back on without any lag. That's kind of the reason why I choose to use Ableton instead of MainStage with my groups. I'm still using MainStage with most of the groups that I'm not at, because obviously MainStage interface is a lot more intuitive, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what's possible. The Max for Live plugin that I'm using is program change to MIDI note Ableton drummer. If you go to Max for Live devices and you go to device library and you type in this program change to MIDI note, you will find a bunch of these different devices that do the same thing. I would actually go Ableton drummer, program change, and I would go to his actual page. Here we go. He's got a bunch of different Max for Live plugins that work really well for exactly this kind of thing. So hopefully this helps. This is the pack that's got this specific device in it, and you can see, I think there is a cost associated with it. Like, it's, but it's a recommended cost. It's like if you would like to pay $12 type thing, which you should support him. So if you have any questions, just hit me up and I will try and guide you through best that I can. Hopefully once I've troubleshot this and I've played around with it for a little bit, I will put this together as a template that I will put out there. But for right now, I still need to do some troubleshooting before I put it in the hands of others. So, all right. Have a wonderful day, guys.